Some words don't just hurt a person. They destroy everything around them. I still remember the exact moment my mother-in-law looked at my newborn baby and said something that changed my entire life. "She's not my son's child." Then she looked at everyone in the room and added, "She's illegitimate." The word illegitimate didn't just hang in the air. It shattered everything. My marriage, my reputation, my peace. But what she didn't know was that one accusation would lead to a DNA test that would expose the darkest secret hidden inside her own family. My name is Emma Richardson. I am 31 years old and I live in Brooklyn, New York, USA. And this is the story of how my mother-in-law tried to erase my daughter from the family and ended up exposing her own truth instead. It all started the day my daughter was born. The happiest day of my life. My husband, Jason, was holding our baby girl with tears in his eyes. Everything felt perfect. For a moment. Just a moment. Because standing in the corner of the hospital room was my mother-in-law, Margaret Hayes. And she wasn't smiling. She was watching. Closely. Too closely. At first I ignored it. I thought she was just overwhelmed. But when she finally spoke, everything changed. "She doesn't look like Jason," she said quietly. I smiled nervously. All Barbies look different in the beginning. But she shook her head. "No," she said. Then she looked directly at me. And added, "She looks like she doesn't belong to this family." That was the first crack. Small, but dangerous. After that day, things changed. Slowly, quietly, people started behaving differently around me. Whispers followed me in hallways. Eyes turned away when I entered rooms. And the word started spreading. Illegitimate. Not directly, but enough. One afternoon, I heard it clearly for the first time. "She's not Jason." My heart stopped. Because I knew exactly where it came from. My mother-in-law. I confronted her the same night. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. She didn't even hesitate. "I'm protecting my son." "From what?" I snapped. She looked at me calmly. "From being fooled." That was the moment I realized something terrifying. This wasn't suspicion. This was conviction. She had already decided the truth. Without proof. Without facts. Just belief. Jason tried to stay neutral at first. "Mom is just emotional," he said. But I could see it. A crack forming. Doubt doesn't need permission. It spreads on its own. Then came the suggestion. "A DNA test." "Just to clear everything," she said. As if my daughter was an accusation instead of a newborn child. I refused. At first. But pressure doesn't always need force. Sometimes it just needs time. And she had plenty of it. Eventually I agreed. Not because I was guilty, but because I was exhausted. I wanted silence more than I wanted pride. The test was done. And the entire family gathered for the results. Living room. Silent. Tense. Like a courtroom waiting for judgment. Jason opened the envelope. Once. Then again. His hands started shaking. His face changed completely. Confusion. Shock. Disbelief. "This can't be," he whispered. My mother-in-law leaned forward immediately. "What does it say?" Jason looked at her. Then at me. Then back at the paper. And said, "The baby is mine." Silence. Complete silence. For the first time. My mother-in-law didn't speak. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just froze. Then slowly something shifted. Because Jason didn't stop there. He turned the paper slightly and read the second page. His expression changed again. This time, not confusion, not shock, but something deeper, something darker. This test also shows something else, he said slowly. My mother-in-law's face tightened. What are you talking about? Jason looked up and said the words that destroyed everything. There's a DNA match between you and someone in this house that shouldn't exist. The room went silent again. But this time, it wasn't shock. It was fear. Because suddenly, the story wasn't about my daughter anymore. It was about something buried inside the family. Something no one was ready for. My mother-in-law stood up abruptly. No, she said. But her voice wasn't strong anymore. It was breaking. And for the first time, I saw it. Not confidence. Not control. Fear. Real fear. Because whatever the DNA test revealed, it wasn't just about proving my daughter innocent. It was about exposing something she had hidden for years. Something that was now coming out. Piece by piece. And that was the moment I realized. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of hers falling apart. The silence after those DNA results wasn't normal anymore. It wasn't calm. It wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that feels like something is about to explode. And this time, it wasn't my life that was shaking. It was theirs. My mother-in-law stood in the middle of the room, frozen. Her face had changed completely. The confidence she carried for weeks was gone. Jason was still holding the report, staring at it like it was something dangerous. And I was watching both of them, slowly realizing something was very wrong. Because this was no longer about my daughter. It was about something hidden. Something buried. Something that was finally coming up. Jason finally spoke again, his voice lower this time. This doesn't just confirm paternity. He paused, then added, it shows a second match. My chest tightened. Second match with who? I asked. No one answered immediately. Because everyone already knew. They just didn't want to say it out loud. Jason looked at his mother. And for the first time in his life, he looked at her differently. Not as a son, but as someone trying to understand a stranger. Mom, why does your DNA partially match someone else in this house? The room went cold. My mother-in-law's breathing changed. Faster. Uneven. No, she whispered, that's not possible. But the paper didn't lie. Science doesn't negotiate. She stepped back slowly. This is wrong, she said louder now. This test is wrong. But Jason didn't move. He just kept reading. And the more he read, the quieter he became. Until finally, he said something that changed everything. This explains why you were so obsessed with proving the baby wasn't mine. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Because suddenly it made sense. The suspicion. The accusations. The desperation. It was never about my daughter. It was about hiding something else. My mother-in-law's face broke. For the first time, she wasn't controlling the room anymore. The room was controlling her. What are you talking about? I asked slowly. Jason looked at me. Then at her. And said, this family has another truth she never told us. The next few minutes were chaos without sound. No one shouted. No one moved. But everything inside that room was collapsing. Because secrets don't stay buried forever. Not when science gets involved. My mother-in-law suddenly tried to take the paper. No one is reading anything else, she snapped. But Jason pulled it away. And that's when she lost control completely. Stop it, she shouted. You don't understand what you're doing. But it was too late. Because now we all understood something simple. She wasn't protecting the family. She was protecting herself. Jason stepped forward. His voice was sharp now. Tell me the truth. She didn't answer. And that silence was the answer. I looked at her carefully and asked the question that changed everything. What are you hiding? Her eyes flickered. Just for a second. But I saw it. Fear. Not of being wrong, but of being exposed. And then it came out. Not all at once, but piece by piece. Like something breaking under pressure. There are things you don't know about this family, she said quietly. Jason's voice dropped. Like what? She didn't answer. Not immediately. Because some truths are too heavy to speak quickly. Finally, she whispered. Because not everything in this family is what it looks like. That was it. The final crack. Because now even Jason understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a cover-up. Years of silence. Years of control. Years of hiding something that DNA had just forced into the light. And I realized something in that moment. My daughter was never the problem. She was just the trigger. The truth was already there, waiting. Jason looked at me, then at his mother, and said the final line that ended everything. This ends now. She didn't fight back this time. She couldn't. Because the truth was already out. And no amount of control could put it back. That night everything changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But permanently. Because sometimes revenge doesn't come from anger. It comes from truth. And truth doesn't need permission to destroy lies.